Hi, it's your host, Sydney. Welcome back to another episode of Metabolism Diaries, the podcast where people share their unfiltered journeys on GLP-1s. Today's guest is Kelsey Martinez, and if you've been on the internet at all, you probably already know her. She has over 500,000 followers across her social platforms, and she was one of the first, I would call her the OG, to share her GLP-1 journey online. In this episode, we get into it all, what made her decide to start this medication, her journey with PCOS, her love of beauty, and I can't wait for you to hear this. I know you're going to love it. So let's get into it. There's so much misinformation out there. And so thank you to people like you who are sharing their authentic journeys. I wanted to start at the beginning. What was the moment when you first decided that you were going to try a GLP-1?
There was like kind of an aha moment that I've shared before that kind of triggered like, not necessarily I'm going to do a GLP-1, but was like, I have to do something. So I was on vacation with my kids. My littlest, I think, was barely 1 year old. She wasn't even quite one yet. And we're like in this pool and there's like a lazy river and I have her with me and she like wants to get out or whatever. So I put her up on the edge of the pool and I could not get myself out. I like tried to pull myself up on the edge and I could not get myself out. She's up there and I'm like, I gotta get out. I gotta get out of here. Like she's up here, and she's starting to like walk away from me. She's a little, she's a tiny baby. And I think it was kind of like in that moment that it all came like crushing down on me. That was kind of like, I physically can't like keep up with my kids. And then I started kind of going down the rabbit hole of like, how do I keep them safe? And like, if I can't like do things like this, like how, like there could be a time where I need to do something like that. So I started kind of like, just circling. And that's kind of when I started like my initial research of like, okay, what can I do? I'd been following a girl, her name was Erin Williams. I'd been following her for a long time and she had started a GLP-1. And so I was like, what is this? And like, what's going on? So then I started doing some research. I did the same thing, went to TikTok. But at that time, there really wasn't anything on TikTok.
Yeah.
I think I found
Yeah.
like maybe one creator who was
Yes.
posting about it. So I went to my doctor. I went to my gynecologist and he was like, no help. He was like, go on birth control. He's like, it was so it was interesting to me that 10 years after I'd been diagnosed with PCOS, the remedy for it was still like birth control.
Birth control.
And so I was like, I don't want to do that. And so I started researching more, went to another doctor. She was like, this isn't really my specialty. Go see a weight care specialist. So anyways, I ended up finding like a telehealth platform that focused on weight care. And that's how I started. And then I was able to find an endocrinologist really quickly after that, like within 2 months or so, who kind of
Right.
monitored my journey from then on. And I still see him to this day.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I remember thinking when I first learned about GLP-1s and I was like, okay, I see this works for some people, but is this really going to work for me? Did you feel
Yeah.
that at all?
Absolutely. I think I felt very defeated at that point in my life because I felt like I had tried so many things and
Yeah.
it just never worked, or it worked for the 20 pounds and then it just stopped working. And so that's one of the reasons why I actually picked up my phone and I recorded the day before I took my shot. I was like, I'm going to take my
Yeah.
shot. This is it. And I kind of wanted to document the journey, especially because, I did have a glimmer of hope and I was like, I think 1% of me thought that it would work. I didn't think that I really thought this was going to work. But I was like, what
Yeah.
if it does? What if
Yeah.
this is it? And so it did. And I'm so happy that it did.
Yeah. And do you remember like that moment when you were younger and like the first time? I know you've discussed before that you tried Weight Watchers and all these different diets. Do you remember the age when all that started?
Yeah. Yeah. I think like in high school, I was always pretty average. I was like, 150, 160 pounds. Like I was active.
Yeah.
In high school, I guess I did feel like, I would get some of like the chubby comments sometimes, but I never felt big in high school. I knew I was bigger than my friends, but I didn't feel like I didn't feel much of it. And then once I graduated high school, that's when I feel like my PCOS like kind of really kicked into gear. And so, yeah, so I started doing Weight Watchers in high school. I think
Okay.
my senior year, I remember like, prom was coming up or whatever it was. And I was like, I want to lose a couple of pounds. I want to look really cute in my dress. And I remember
Yeah.
trying it then. I also grew up in the 2000s, like, with a mom who was like on the grapefruit diet, the Whole Foods
Yeah.
diet, and like the drink a cup of coffee and then have half a grapefruit for lunch. Like, So
Mhm.
I grew up around diet culture a lot.
Yeah.
Like, it was very prevalent in my upbringing. And I definitely, like I said, throughout my life, I definitely felt like I was a little bigger than my friends, but it didn't feel as heavy as it did when I was in college.
That makes
And
sense.
yeah, and then through that, I remember, I got married to my husband when I was like 20. And I remember we would
Yeah.
try all different sorts of things. And Kevin was like the most supportive guy. So he would just like do whatever I wanted to, whatever
Oh,
I wanted. And so I did like, South Beat and keto, and we did CrossFit, which I actually loved. And then, intermittent fasting, the Whole 30, anything and everything. And we were getting married, we were having our wedding. And so, at first it was for that. And then I started having kids, and every time I'd have a kid and then I'd try and lose weight, I'd go back to Weight Watchers and I would lose 30 pounds and I'd be so happy. And then I'd
yeah.
gain it all back in like a month or two. So anyways, throughout like the past, like, for a decade or more, it was just constant circle of diet, not no diet,
Yeah.
diet, like it just constantly.
Exhausting.
Yeah.
And now I think I saw in one of your videos, you were saying like when I started GLP-1, I was like, no more diets. Like I'm not going to
Mhm.
restrict myself. And can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that for someone who's just starting their journey, like what that looked like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know what this aha moment was. Maybe it was turning 30, but I realized at that point that I had a really horrible relationship with food,
Hmm.
in the sense of like, because of the years and years of Weight Watchers, I would look at a food and subconsciously try and calculate the points value in my head, even though
Yeah.
wasn't on Weight Watchers, even though
Yeah.
I hadn't been on it. I would look at something and be like, that's 4 points, or be like, that, that cookie is 10 points, whatever it is. And I was constantly doing that. And it just became consuming. And I think that, and especially when I was doing Weight Watchers, it was even more all consuming.
Yeah.
So when I had thought about taking a GLP-1, and then my sister and I had kind of been around along some similar journeys, and like I said, we tried all different types of things. One thing that I really loved was this idea of like intuitive eating.
Yes.
But at the time, I knew that it was never going to be doable for me. Like, I knew that if I ate intuitively,
Yeah.
I was just gonna eat whatever I wanted. Like, that was not gonna
Yeah.
be like a thing that I could, that would be sustainable for me. So when I started taking the GLP-1, I remember like having this internal conversation with myself, which was, I'm not gonna cut out anything completely. Everything is fair game. Like, I wanted to learn, I wanted to feel the power to eat what I wanted to eat and stop when I wanted to stop. And I didn't know that I could have that power. And that's something that I wanted. And I wanted it in a way that wasn't like, be more disciplined, stop eating this now. Like, I wanted to feel like I was good. Like, I wanted to eat something and be like, okay, now I'm good,
Yes.
without it feeling like this mental, like powerful, like, power trip. So
Yeah.
before I started, I kind of like had decided that I was going to really try and eat in moderation, that I was going to eat where I felt content, knowing, and this is kind of how I communicate with my kids, that like, there are foods that we eat because they feel really good in our tummies. There are foods that we eat because they sound really yummy in our heads. There are foods that we eat
Yeah.
like for different reasons, and knowing that none of those reasons is a bad reason to eat anything.
Yeah.
And just kind of be like more open to this new kind of style of losing weight.
Definitely. And when you started a GLP-1, did you have any like guilt? Like I remember I was like, okay, there's this new advance in medicine, but like I just wished I could do it myself. But I was like, I've tried for so long and it's been so exhausting. But
Mhm,
I saw some of my friends be able to like control themselves and kind of stop what you were
mhm.
just talking about when they were full
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And I just knew I couldn't. And I'm just curious like how that was for you.
Yeah, I think for me, so I think there's 2 things. I think one, for me, having PCOS, I was not someone who was necessarily like a binge eater. Like, I
Okay.
didn't necessarily eat like really huge portions of food. I definitely
Yeah.
had a sweet tooth, but like when it came to like actually eating in portion size, for me, it wasn't like a super huge amount of calories. And so I think what I realized when I was, 250 pounds, and I was at this point in my life, I had my third baby, and I felt so out of control that I think throughout my journey, like, as I started getting it going, I think I felt more guilt later on. But in that
Yeah.
moment, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel like a failure. I felt like I was giving up. Like, I was waving my white flag, and I was kind of like, I got nothing left. I don't know what to do. I'm so out of control of my body. I can't play with my kids. I have no energy. Like, I was just like, I gave up. And I think a little bit, into my journey, a little bit after I had lost a little bit, I remember having a conversation with someone, And we were talking about this idea that weight loss had to be hard and that we are kind of like conditioned to be like, if you're fat, it's your fault and you got yourself into that hole, you dig yourself out. It should be hard. You should have to do
Yeah.
physical. It should be really difficult mentally and physically. You got yourself there. And when I started to understand PCOS more and started to understand insulin resistance more and understand kind of the hand that I had been dealt, I kind of subconsciously or consciously took that blame away from myself
Yeah.
and was just like, I need help.
Yeah.
Like, what is a solution? And that's when a GLP-1 came in as like my solution.
That's great. And something I really admire is like the confidence that not only you had to be one of the first to share your journey on social media, but also to really like advocate for yourself with doctors that were
Mhm.
taught or like they're the ones who went to medical school. They know, they
Yeah.
know. So can you
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about like so many people are struggling with confidence? Was that something your parents instilled in you?
I think that in this part of my life, I am wildly confident. The taking a GLP-1 in the asking for what I want, I am wildly confident in that sense. Not in every part of my life, but definitely
Yeah.
in this part of my life. I have always had a little bit of like spice in me, a little bit of like sass in me. I'm a
Yeah.
Taurus. I'm Hispanic. I just have always I don't like taking no for an answer. I also just really like people
Yeah.
and I can really read people really well. And so
Yeah.
for me, when I would go to doctors and they would be like, you gotta, you gotta eat less and we gotta move. And I'd kind of be watching them as they said that. And I'd be like, you're hiding something from me. I could just read them like you're not telling me the truth. There is
Yeah.
more. You could be offering me more right now. You want me to do this same thing that I've done for the past 10 years. And I think that I'd gotten to a point where I was like, this isn't working. Like whatever
Yeah.
you're telling me to do isn't working. And I think that I did my own research. And I think one of the things that I always tell people is to like, there is a doctor out there
Mhm.
that will be on your team. And
Yes.
you don't need a doctor that's going to necessarily tell you yes to everything because that's not
Yeah.
necessarily what you need. What you need is a doctor that is a team member in your health journey that wants to work with you. They're not working against you. They're not shaming you. They're not
Yeah.
belittling you. They are working alongside with you. And I think that is the most, hands down, the most important part of this journey. Because how many times have we been to doctors and they've just said, like, now, mm-mm. And we're like, huh? Like, what do you mean? So I think finding a doctor that is kind of a teammate with you.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I kind of went through a couple of doctors was because I didn't find one that I felt like was on my team. I had doctors that I felt like were covering things up. And also, when it comes to polycystic ovarian syndrome, they didn't know. There are doctors that are going to pretend like they know this disease and know about it and know how it works. They don't know. See that birth control falsely fix your hormones and get you a cycle every month. And that's what they want to see.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think that when it comes to like being confident and being proactive, I think that exactly what it is. It's like there are going to be doctors who are going to tell you no for things. You just need to find someone that's on your team.
That's great advice. And for someone who maybe thinks that they have PCOS, but they're not sure, can you just share some of the like main signs to look out for and how you realized and recognized in your own body?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I always had PCOS ever since I got a cycle when I was a teenager. I would go months without them, then I would randomly get them. My cycles were always all over the place. And when I went to the doctor when I was 16 years old about it, she was like, "Oh, go on birth control." And
Mhm.
so I went on birth control and that, fixed me for I guess it was like 6 years. And then I went off birth control when I was like thinking about starting to want to have a baby and I just never got a cycle. Like it never came back and it had been like 3 months. And so I went to the doctor and she was like, huh, that's weird. So anyways, she ran a bunch of tests at that time. And some of the things that I noticed, number one for me, it was the absent and infrequent cycles. So I would get like 2 or 3 a year. So that was the number one, like big thing. Number two, like facial hair growth, acne, size, gaining weight. We were trying to have a baby. We were not having luck trying to have a baby. So there were a lot of different signs that kind of showed themselves. And then through testing like ultrasounds and blood work, she was able to kind of confirm like, yeah, you have PCOS. But the thing with PCOS too is that it's different for everyone. I know people who are super thin who have PCOS. I know people who have regular cycles every single month who have PCOS. So I think that the variation of PCOS changes. But for me, I had like very classic insulin resistant polycystic ovarian syndrome.
And did the GLP-1 fix a lot of those things? Obviously, the weight, and then you got your period back. But how about the acne and the facial hair and stuff like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Wow.
My acne has kind of gone up and down my entire life. So while that can be like a PCOS symptom, I don't know that that's necessarily like a standalone symptom, you know? So with my skin, the GLP-1 didn't really do much for my skin. The facial hair, I feel like got better. So it didn't go away completely, but for me, I think that it got better. The biggest thing though for me is that if you were to look from the inside, so if you were to take blood, if you were to look at an ultrasound, you would never know that I had PCOS. So
Wow.
there'd be no signs or symptoms of it right now. I get a cycle every single month. I've been getting a cycle every single month since I was like on the GLP-1 for 6 weeks. I ovulate every single month. My blood work, my A1C is down, my hormones are level. Like you would never really know that I had it. And that is all thank you to the GLP-1. I mean, so much so that like now that I'm in maintenance, I tried spacing out my injections a little bit. So right now I take them like every 10 days. But I was trying to push for like 2 weeks or so. And one of the things that I noticed was my cycles got longer. So I was having like 50-day cycles instead of like 30-day cycles. And the inflammation kind of came back. I noticed some parts of my face was getting a little bit puffy, things like that. I actually had blood work done at a point where I had done that a couple of times in a row. And my hormones started to kind of go like, instead of being level, the testosterone started going up, the estrogen started kind of going down. So it's like different things started happening. And so when I talked to my endocrinologist about it, he was like, yeah, listen, like you could, because I wasn't gaining weight though. That was the only other thing was like even spacing out the injections, it wasn't really impacting my weight, which is why I wanted to space them out. Cause I was like, oh, if
Okay.
my weight's stable, then I don't need to like
Yeah.
take it as often. And so my endocrinologist was kind of like, listen, to keep like you having regular cycles, your hormones level, like to keep that in line, you should be taking it every week or like at least every like 9 or 10 days. So that's kind of how I found that balance. And again, that's just from finding a doctor that's like really like on my team who's there for me. We kind of like experimented a little. So for me, like as much as I love the weight loss part of it, the PCOS management part of it is something that's like way more important to me and something that's going to be a big part of my life for a while.
And what does a maintenance dose look like?
Hmm.
You said once every 10 days. How small of a dose is that?
Yeah.
And do you see yourself being on this long term?
Yeah, definitely. And obviously everybody knows I'm not a medical professional, but
Yeah.
this is just what I did. But as far as like a maintenance dose, it's going to vary so much on the person.
Yeah.
I know people who are able to go back down to like 5 or 2.5. And again, I'm on name brand Manjaro. This is not for compounds or anything. But then I also see people who, are on the max dose and have been on the max dose for years. And that's where they
Yeah.
maintain. So it all kind of depends on you. And you kind of have to play around with it. For me, I take 10 milligrams. That was the dose that I've been on the longest that my body really likes. And I take it every 9 or 10 days. That's kind of where I'm at right now. I am meeting with a dietitian right now. So we're kind of learning more about like eating wise and balancing things. And what I'm learning a little bit is it's possible that I can go down maybe a little bit more. So I'm thinking about kind of maybe trying to go down to 7.5, taking that every week and seeing if I can maintain my weight and maintain my PCOS kind of being at bay. But yeah, it's a game. But again, with maintenance and through this whole journey, having a doctor that is with you through it is so important.
Definitely. And how did you deal being one of the trailblazers in the GLP-1 space, especially on social? And every day there's a new article with, okay,
Yes.
some are true, but some are total BS, like Zempic ears and all this stuff. Like of course, some of it you just know is just clickbait, but then
Yeah.
how did you kind of manage that and still stay sure of your journey while seeing all of this negativity about the drug coming
Yeah.
out every day?
That's a great question. It's just like an insane burst of courage that I had kind of in the beginning. But I think for me and for people who have living for a decade in a body that you have no control over, where your hormones are all over the place, you have raging polycystic ovarian syndrome. Like for me, nothing could have stopped me. Like people were like, oh, I don't want to lose weight because of the loose skin. I'm like, huh?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Like, or I don't want to take it because you know, there's a 1% chance that it could impact my pancreas. And I'm like, huh? Like those things were never even like registered to me. And like, obviously, yes, I did my research and I knew the risk going into it. For me, the way that I was living, I was willing to risk all of those things. I will risk it all. Like I wasn't living a life that I was like happy with. I couldn't interact with my kids enough. My cycle, like it was just, there were too many things. Like you make a pros and cons list and there was just no comparison for me. It was like such an easy thing. So when people say that, even now I get comments like that, like drugs aren't the answer and you're going to get pancreatitis and you're going to get thyroid cancer. And I'm like, listen, I know that there are certain things that are also thyroid cancer is still just linked in rats. It's not linked in humans yet. So So that is kind of a weird thing to say. But for me still, I'm like, I will take those 1% odds. And if that is my future, then that is my future. And that is a risk that I am personally taking. And everyone who takes this medication has to weigh that on their own terms, on their own. It is their own decision whether or not you want to do that. This is just what I did.
Yeah. And I want to hear a little bit about how you've been with your husband since you were like
Yeah.
20. Has relationship changed? I'm sure it's changed over the years, but like now being in a different body and
Yeah.
yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. We met when we were 15. So we met in high school and we got
Wow.
married when we were 20. Yeah. We moved to, Kevin was in the military. So we were in Japan for a couple of years. And yeah, my body has definitely like fluctuated and definitely changed a lot. And I don't know how to say it other than like I picked the right partner.
Mhm.
He just, he kind of went along with me for every single journey that I've been on. My body has looked so many different ways. I've had 3 kids, like I've had multiple miscarriages and like he's just been there for me through the entire thing. I think that I have heard of men being like not supportive of it. And I think in general, it comes from a place of fear. Like, I think they're scared. I think that they're scared of medication and things like that. My husband kind of did the research along with me. He gave me his 2 cents along the way too. And I just think that in relationships, there are people that grow together and there are people that grow apart. And,
Yes.
life has a lot of different stages and a lot of different, he's known me since I was a child, basically. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you're either able to grow together or you grow apart through life's different changes. I feel very blessed to have found him so early in life and have been able to kind of grow together. And there's been so much change in our lives.
I'm sure.
Even now being on social media, he's a firefighter. Like we've gone through so many different things. So, but I think that in general, if you were to ask him, I think that he loves the confidence that it gave me. I think that he said we did a podcast before actually, and he said he's like, he always knew like how beautiful you were. I always knew how amazing you were, but like you had such a hard time seeing that when you
Yeah.
were unhappy and you weren't feeling
Yeah.
your best. So he's just really excited now that I'm able to embrace that side of me.
I love that. Note to everyone. I feel like
Yeah.
every relationship, everyone loves confidence. That's what I hear. Everyone's
Yes.
like, or people are like, I'll be dating someone and they'll be like, I love your confidence. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
I gotta remind myself every day. And I
I
try.
know.
And so I want to talk also a little bit about like your social media journey. I've worked at big brands managing their social accounts, and now I'm trying to share my journey with the GLP-1 for myself. And it is so hard. It takes like another level of guts when you're just doing this to share your own journey. And I would say, like, we could start with saying, how have you dealt with the hate? And from the beginning, how
Yeah.
are you just like, okay, no, like I'm finding a
Mhm.
community and an audience that is learning from me?
I think that for me, having been through what I went through, I think that the way that I noticed almost immediately with social media, how I was able to kind of help empower other women, almost from immediately starting, I got questions about what is this called? Like, what are you doing? Like, oh, I have PCOS too. And that relatability and that community that I was able to find through social media, honestly, is like what kept me going.
Yeah.
I've shared this before. I had a miscarriage. I had a 12-week miscarriage in between my first and my second child. And I remember feeling so alone. I had no one to talk to. I had no one to tell. And honestly, the isolation of that felt very similar to the isolation of having PCOS. I
Mm,
didn't have a lot of friends who had it. I didn't know many people who were struggling the same way that I was. And so for me, when I first started posting this, it really was the sense of community and the other women that were kind of going through the same thing,
yeah.
meeting them online and having that community online. And then just kind of feeling like I'm going to be the advocate for them. Like there are so many people that are suffering with this. There's so many people who could benefit from this. Like, why are we shaming it? Why are we closing it
Yeah.
off? Like, it felt very similar to that miscarriage, right? Like, when women have miscarriages, it's not their fault. And it's like they have nothing to do. Like, most of the time they have nothing to do with it. It's like very, very isolating and very hard. And so this journey felt similar to that. And so I really felt empowered to kind of speak up for people who are suffering and speak up for people who have it, because I think a lot of people too think of PCOS as an excuse. They're like,
Yes.
oh, these women are fine. That's an excuse. That's not real. Like they just need to lose weight. And that's just like, I don't have PCOS because I'm fat. I am fat because I have PCOS. Like it's
Yeah.
like those things are inverted, right? So I think I
Yeah.
just felt like this need to kind of stand up for women who maybe didn't have the confidence to be as vocal or weren't feeling empowered to talk to their doctors about it. And it just blossomed. And I still feel so passionate and so strongly. And I worked in human resources, so advocating for people and being the people's voice was kind of my history in my work. I worked for a nonprofit in LA for a long time, and that amplified, voices from underserved communities. And so I feel like I've always kind of been in this kind of like advocacy role and trying to stick up for people and trying to like make sure that they are heard. And that's very important to me. And
Yeah.
so I think that that's kind of also what gave me the confidence in this space, was just my background.
And another thing I've noticed from your content that I love is I think a lot of people who want to grow on social are so like
Yeah.
obsessed with their niche and they feel like they have
Yeah.
to stick to one thing. But I've seen since like you first started posting, you were always sharing like things that you loved outside of just your GLP-1 journey, like beauty. What would you say to some of those people who are kind of trying to find their voice on social? What helped you? Of course, you're very authentic. So I would say that's
Yeah.
number one, but want to hear
Yeah.
from you what you think.
Yeah. So with the niches is like I go back and forth. I think that they're important and I think that they're not. I don't think that your niche has to be a subject. Like I don't think that your niche is GLP-1s or your niche is beauty. I think that your niche is you. I think that you are the special piece. You are
Yeah.
the piece that you should be talking about. And it can be also and it can come through in social media and, like, how you edit your content. I swear there are some people who just edit all of their content the same way, and I'm like, "Oh, that's so cool. I wanna watch everything they do," because that is their niche. So I think that there's so many different ways to kind of go about social media, but the number one thing that I will say is that you have to be authentic. Not only just because I know everybody says this like be yourself, be yourself. You can't survive in this space for very long if you're trying to impersonate someone else. So, obviously we all learn from each other on social media. So I don't mean that in the way of like you can't do trends or like you can't, do any of that. Do all of those things, but make sure you're being you when you're doing it. So make sure you put your spin on it. With beauty, for example, when I'm talking about beauty products, I always like to think about the way that I use them. And I try to think of it in a way that's like outside of the box. So
Yeah.
whenever you're talking about anything, think of something that makes it like cool and outside of the box, whether it's cooking, whether it's beauty, whether it's hair, whether it's GLP-1. What is a unique experience that you've had with it and kind of share that? I think that that's the biggest thing. And I think too, people often say that they have a hard time talking in front of the camera, that it's like intimidating to them to talk
Yeah.
on. Just practice. Like if you were to see my first week of videos compared to my now, I'm show up completely differently in the way that my voice sounds and the way that my confidence radiates. Like it's
Yeah.
so different now, but you have to continuously do it. So I
Definitely.
think posting those, as much as annoying as it is, posting 3 or 4 videos a day, or at least recording 3 or 4 videos a day and then posting 1 or 2, something along those lines that really gets you used to talking to your phone. Because that's the other thing is I think that some people, it's not that they're not coming across authentic, it's that they're shy or they're lacking confidence.
Yeah.
So they don't feel confident talking to their phone, and then it comes across as like, "Oh, I don't wanna watch that person." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not that
Yeah.
they're not cut out for it, it's just that they need to practice it.
Yeah, and find their voice. And
Mhm.
well, do you remember the first video? Was it kind of immediate that you got traction?
Yeah, so, again, I started GLP-1s in a time where no one was doing GLP-1s, it
Yeah.
was a very small portion of us, so I made a video, I had my box of Mounjaro, and I was like, thanks to, like, the TikTok community, I figured out that there was a coupon, and I'm gonna start my Mounjaro tonight, and wish me luck, I'm so excited. First video, posted it, thought nothing of it. The next day, I went to my sister was having her baby, actually, she was having my niece, and I'm in the hospital, and I, like,
Oh,
pull it up while I'm waiting, and I saw that it had, like, 15,000 views. And at that time, I was like, "Oh my god." I was like, "That is crazy work." Like that, like I was expecting like I wasn't familiar with TikTok. I chose TikTok because it was away from my people that actually knew me in real life. I didn't know
yeah.
anyone who had TikTok. Everyone
Yeah.
had Instagram, so I was like, "I'm not gonna post on Instagram. I'm gonna post on TikTok." And then it was just tons of questions. And so then it was like, "What dose are you taking? Where did you get it? How did you curl your hair like that?" And then I just leaned into all of that, and that's kind of how it originally started.
Amazing. And do you ever
Yeah.
deal with still to this day at all, like, vulnerability hangovers? After you post a video,
Mm.
like, think about taking it down at all or not really?
Rarely. I think there's maybe been a couple of times in my career where I've kind of been like, but at the same time, I think that this happens as you start to get more of a following. You get in your head a little bit about what you post. But for
Yeah.
the most part, I'm pretty like, I'm posting it. I think that there's only been 1 or 2 times. And coming from a background of like HR and like, I really like, I'm naturally kind of thinking around a situation fully, like in a whole circle, rather
Mhm.
than just kind of thinking in that moment. So, yeah, I try to be really intentional with my content, but at the same time, I'm just still posting things that are like resonate with me.
Definitely. And When you were like when you were losing weight and your body was
Mhm.
changing, like when you go down a jean size or something, you're like
Yeah.
shopping and you just don't even know like what to buy.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, should I buy it now? Am I going to stay this size because you think maybe the weight's going to come back?
Yeah.
How has your relationship with shopping changed?
Yeah. Oh my God, this is such a good question. And I think that this is something that I really felt like a year and a half, a year into my journey. And honestly, I still feel this way. I'm constantly still buying things that are too big for me because
Yeah.
I just like still like it's gotten so much better. I've gotten so much better, but it's definitely a thing. When it comes to shopping throughout, you don't want to spend a ton of money, right? Because it's like your body is changing. So I think the biggest thing when it comes to actually shopping during your journey is don't overdo it. So like when you go down a pant size, if you think you're going to go down more, buy like one pair of pants and then kind of go from there. But when it comes to shopping and seeing my changing body and like the body dysmorphia part of it, it's definitely something that I struggle with. I definitely still struggle with it. Like I just made a video the other day that was like, I watched a video back of me and I was like, I look thinner in that video than I am. Like I'm not really and so it still kind of messes with my head a little bit. I still like want to pull for a large. Whenever I go shopping, I want to buy a large and I'm constantly having to tell my like, okay, I'm a medium. I'm a medium. And also sizing just sucks. So it's like sometimes I am a large. Like, it just kind of depends what it is. So I think it is a journey. Take it slow and also just like talk to yourself and kind of check in with how you're feeling and how you're doing. Shopping with friends is also really great because they can kind of it is kind of a trip when you
I'm
shop
sure.
for clothes by yourself, like, especially in the middle of your journey, it's kind of trippy. So definitely make sure you have some kind of support. And then now I'm on the flip side of it. So just like full transparency, sometimes I'll catch myself like trying something on or looking in the mirror and I'll be like, I look big here, or like my stomach looks, weird. Like, and I catch myself even doing the flip side of it now.
Yeah.
So it's definitely like a full journey. You just kind of have to like go through the motions, check in with yourself constantly, and just, yeah, it's rough.
And when you were living in Japan, I was really interested in that and how you said how many years were you there? And also, like, I don't know, I feel like people blame America and American diet and culture. And I know
Yeah.
Japanese culture is supposed to be so healthy. So I'm just
Yeah.
curious to hear, were you eating like differently there? Has any of that influenced how you eat now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I lived on base in Japan, so there was still plenty of American food
Yeah.
on base, and we still had the commissary, still had all of our things that we like to eat. I will say that like like off base, like the sushi was amazing, everything was amazing. I don't know that it necessarily like influenced how I was eating per se. Like my husband and I, like Kevin and I still cooked at home, and we still ate at the Americanized restaurants there and stuff. But I will say that I love sushi now. Having been in Japan, I think like really expanded my love for sushi and love for fish and love for like sashimi and like all that stuff. I think it definitely pushed me to try new stuff. And sushi is still, and fish in general is still a really big part of my diet.
Definitely.
And that's actually a great question. I don't know. I'm curious. I'm like, oh, maybe Japan did influence that a little bit.
Yeah,
But
because
yeah,
when I heard
definitely.
that, I was like, Japan, and they're always comparing our cultures and our body
Yes.
sizes, and I'm like, I don't know what they do over there, but and so your husband, he was in the military, he's a firefighter. Are you guys like a very active family?
Yeah, I mean, I think he is very active. He's been in CrossFit and he used to do triathlons and he still enjoys like working out a lot now. And I am
Yeah.
someone who I've never fallen in love with like working out per se. Like I liked CrossFit a lot, but for me, I really like doing things that are just more like team based and like sports based. So like my kids are
Yeah.
all really into sports. So for me, like I'd rather like go out and play tennis than like sit in
Yes.
the garage and do like a workout or run on the treadmill. I'd like to go on like hikes or I'll take the dog to like a trail walk and things like that. I like to do things outside kind of in nature. As far as like my activity level, all of our kids are very like, especially my older two, my youngest one is still a little young, but my older two, they love sports. They love baseball. They love football. My daughter's a soccer player. Like we are outside doing stuff all the time. So I guess in comparison to a lot of people, I think we are pretty active, but I wouldn't say that I'm like in the gym 5 days a week or anything like that.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. And have you talked to your kids about your GLP-1 journey? I know there are a lot of moms that take this postpartum. Have you had that conversation with your kids, or are they too young?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they were pretty young. I think, they were what, I guess like 5, 2, and or 3, I don't know, 6, 3, and 1 maybe when I started taking it. So
Yeah.
the only thing that I notice now is like if they see pictures. So like if
Yes.
they see, I think my oldest kind of knows. I think she knows that like I used to be bigger and I lost weight. And I think that my little two like will see pictures of me. And usually when they see pictures of me, like when I was in a bigger body, they'll be like, oh, I was in your tummy, like you were pregnant. That's
Yeah.
kind of what that's what they correlate it with.
Yeah.
So I haven't had a big discussion about that, but we do have a lot of discussions at home about people's bodies and
Yeah.
how we don't need to comment on people's bodies, and people come in all different shapes and sizes, and we have
Yeah.
all different types of people in our family, and everybody looks different and is different, and what makes you pretty is what's on the inside, is your heart. It doesn't have anything to do with what you look like on the outside, which is also like my I'll have my youngest, so I'll put on some makeup and she'll be like, "Mommy, you look so pretty." And I'll be like, "Well, let's have a conversation about that, because it's not the makeup. It's not the makeup." But I think that there is a balance with kids where you can kind of talk about it in a way that feels right. And I think when it comes to food, especially, we are very like, food isn't bad for you. Like there's certain foods that fill you in this way, and there's certain foods that do this way. Like if you're going to go play in a soccer game, then these types of foods are probably going to make you feel your best when you're playing in a soccer game. These
Yeah.
types of foods are like yummy foods that you get to eat when you celebrate at a birthday party, and when or if you're just like feeling like a little treat. Like these are some things that you can have that, like, so I don't like make anything off limits per se. I just try and really focus on the types of foods that we eat and how they affect our body and our energy levels and things like that.
That's a great way to frame it. And how about your daughter? Has she shown any interest in beauty? I know, like, I see so many young women now or
Yeah.
girls on like TikTok now doing like get readies with me. And I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
like under 12. But do
Yeah.
you let her use makeup, or how
Yeah.
how has that been?
My 9-year-old, not at all. She doesn't
Okay.
even know, like, she did, like, a little voiceover for me yesterday, actually, and she didn't know
Cute.
what, like, an eyebrow pencil. She, like, had no idea what I was doing to my eyebrows, like, when
Yeah.
put foundation, she doesn't know what a foundation is, she doesn't know what concealer is, she doesn't know anything. She knows, like, she has, like, her face wash and her face lotion for her face, and, but she is, like, the opposite of that. Like, she's, like, Miss Sporty out, like, could care less about putting makeup on. I mean, for like Halloween and stuff, she's always like a princess or something, and she likes to put mascara or blush, but she doesn't want lip gloss on. Like, she's the opposite. My youngest one, however, is already like, she's 4, and she's already like, "Mommy," like, she like, oftentimes when I'm filming, she'll be sitting like right next to me, like doing her own makeup and like putting on her own lip gloss, and like she'll pretend to talk to the phone. She'll pretend in the mirror that she's like, "And now I'm gonna put on my lipstick." So like she grew up more with me doing this from when she was really little. So she's had much more of an influence in that way. My oldest, absolutely not. So it's just, they're so different.
And as a beauty lover, did you experience hair loss at all?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I definitely lost a little bit of hair. I don't think it was nearly as bad as a lot of people. Through my hair has always been like wildly thick. Like I've always had a ton
Yeah.
of hair. So through having 3 kids and being postpartum and then losing 100 pounds, my hair definitely went through it. It was a lot more brittle. Like the actual hair was more brittle, and I did lose some volume, but I didn't feel like I had no hair. Like I never felt like I had no hair. I also, like I've said this from the beginning, I think it's one of the most important things is just like making sure you're eating on a GLP-1. I think that has to do with hair loss a lot of the time. So like eating protein and like hitting my protein goals was really, really important to me. I took a hair vitamin. I used a scalp serum. So I tried to take really good care of it because my hair is really important to me. But even right now I have extensions in. Like I have a row of extensions in the back. So I do
Okay.
still have a good amount of hair, but I did lose some. It's kind of one of those things that like people are like, "But you'll lose your hair," and I'm like, "I can get extensions." I was so in the thick of it that I was like, that would never
Yeah.
deter me from like taking the medication. And for some people, if it does, that's totally fine. But just like for me, none of those things mattered.
Have you had any other side effects on your journey?
Honestly, I feel like I've been so lucky in that I really never had that many side effects. I definitely would have like a day of nausea. Like if I like went up in dose or something like that, get a little nauseous for like a day or so, but it was so manageable that it never really like it never deterred me. I'm trying to think of what else. I think when I was on 5 milligrams, I was a little bit tired. I was more fatigued, but I also, again, had like a 1-year-old. So, but I think that there are definitely people who get side effects. I mean, there are people who are like, I'm throwing up every day. And I'm like, ooh, I would not be on this if I was throwing up every day. Like, I think you just have to like, figure out what your side effects are. But for me, I feel like very lucky in that I really haven't had many.
And did you ever start and stop the medication?
I've never stopped it. I've been taking it consistently for 3.5 years. I mean, I spread it out, like I've said, like
Yes.
sometimes I'll go 2 weeks and things like that, but I've never not taken it for more than like 2 or 3 weeks.
And what is like the number one question that you see people ask you about your GLP-1 journey?
My gosh. I think hair loss is a big one.
Hair
I think
loss.
people
Yeah.
ask about hair loss a lot. Also, you have no loose skin. I do have loose skin. I just feel like I hide it really well, but people ask about the loose skin part of it a lot too.
Now, I'll just end by asking you, what would be your number one piece of advice to someone who's just starting out?
Such a good one. I think, like I said earlier, I think you have to find a really good team. You have to have a really good support system. You have to have a really great doctor that's kind of with you. I think without that, I think it's going to be a hard journey. I think you may be okay in the beginning, but then throughout your journey, you're going to find that you need someone that's like really supportive. And so I think
Yes.
that that would be probably my biggest tip. And also, you don't owe an explanation to anyone. Don't feel like you have to explain yourself
Yeah.
to anyone. Don't feel like you have to tell people. You don't have to tell anyone. It's a personal conversation between you, yourself, and your doctor, maybe your husband or your partner, but in general, don't feel like you have to explain it to anyone.
I love that. That is such good advice. It's just like, well, people are on anxiety medication and different types of medications like
For
that are
sure.
so common that it's not like you announce it to all your friends, like, hey, just so
Right.
everyone knows. So
Yeah.
that's really important. So thank
Yeah.
you for sharing.
Yeah, it's chronic it's a chronic health condition that a lot of us have, and so I think that,
Yeah.
like, there's this stigma around being overweight that has to do with,
Mhm.
like, laziness and things like that, and so I think really just yeah, just, like, I'll talk for you. Like, like, don't worry about telling people, like and telling people to fuck off, like, I'll handle
Exactly.
that part.
Thank you so much. And thank you for
Thank
being like
you.
one of the first to share your journey online. It is
Of
so
course.
helpful and inspiring. That's a wrap on today's episode with the incredible Kelsey Martinez. I hope you were as inspired by her story as I was, and I hope it reminded you that this journey looks different for everyone. If you loved this episode, make sure you're following Metabolism Diaries on Instagram and TikTok, and subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and YouTube so you never miss an episode. See you next time.